Hi, today we're going to be learning how to draw linear graphs using the intercept method. Linear graphs, also known as straight line graphs, are represented by straight lines. We can express their equations in two common forms. First, we have the standard form, which is y equals mx plus c, and then we also have the form ax plus by equals c. The main one that we're going to be using is standard form, y equals mx plus c. Most linear graphs have two important points called the x-intercept and the y-intercept. These are the points where the graph intersects the axes. First, we have the x-intercept, which is the point where the graph intersects the x-axis, and it is the point where y is equal to 0, because everywhere along the x-axis, the y value is always going to be 0. Then we have the y-intercept, which is the point where the graph intersects the y-axis, and it is the point where x is equal to 0, because everywhere along the y-axis, the x value will always be 0. Now, we've already learned how to draw graphs using the table method. Here's an example of a graph that's been drawn using the table method. And you can see over here, I've got a number of points that I got from the table over here. Okay, now the reality is we could have drawn this graph if I didn't have that point. I could have drawn this graph if I didn't have that point. I could have drawn this graph if I didn't have this one. I could have drawn it if I didn't have that point. And I could have drawn this graph if I didn't have that point. And I would still get the same straight line. If I try and take away another point, I will have a problem though, because if I take away an extra point and I only have one point, then I don't know what direction to draw the line. I could draw a line that looks like that, or that looks like that, or that looks like that. There's an infinite number of lines that I could draw going through that one point if I don't know what direction to draw it. So in order to make sure that I know what direction to draw a line, I have to have at least 2 points, but I don't need to have more than 2. I only actually have to have 2 points. I just can't have only 1 point. I have to have at least 2. Okay, so once I've got 2 points, those other possibilities disappear, because now I know what direction I have to draw the line. So when we're drawing a straight line graph, we actually only need 2 points. The x and y intercepts are often the easiest to find, and so that's why we use the intercept method to draw linear graphs. So when we're going to draw a straight line graph, you only need 2 points. The x and y intercepts are usually the easiest points to find, and they're important to label as well. So it makes sense for those to be the points that we're going to find. So when we're going to draw a graph using the intercept method, we need to find the two intercepts. So we find the x-intercept by setting y equal to 0 and solving for x. And we find the y-intercept by setting x equal to 0 and solving for y. Now, if the equation is written in the form y equals mx plus c, the standard form, then when we set x equal to 0, it makes this term over here disappear, which means that our y-intercept will just be the c value over here. So the y-intercept is c. If your equation is written in this form, then the y-intercept will be c. Sometimes you have a graph where it goes through the origin. And when it goes through the origin, the x and y intercepts are the same point. Now remember I said you have to have 2 points when you're drawing a graph. You can't only have 1 point. So if your graph goes through the origin, and so there's actually only one intercept, then you need to find an additional point by substituting in any x value and solving for y to get an extra point, in the same way that we would when we're using the table method. Okay, so that's the origin case. You also can have a graph where you get the equation y equals a number and there's no x value in the equation. This is when you have a line that is horizontal, it is parallel to the x-axis, and it doesn't have an x-intercept, because with being parallel to the x-axis, it's never going to get closer to the x-axis, and it's never going to intersect the x-axis. So you will only have a y-intercept. So when this happens, you need to also, just like we did over here, we have to find a second point. Now, this is actually easier because we already know that every single point on that line is going to have the same y value, because the equation is y equals that number. So you just need to choose any other x value that you're going to put with that y value to plot another point. And then we do the same thing if you have an equation x equals a number, just the other way around. when you have an equation x equals a number, then it will be a vertical line which is parallel to the y-axis. So once again, it will only have one intercept. This time it will be an x-intercept because it's intersecting the x-axis. So you'll find your second point by using that x value and any other y value. So then you'll have your extra point that you can use to plot your graph. Once you've got your 2 points, so it could be 2 points which are the x and y intercepts, or it could be one intercept, whether it's the origin or a y-intercept or an x-intercept, depending on what case you're working with, and another point. Once you've got your 2 points, you then go and draw the graph. You plot the points that you have found and you use a ruler to draw a straight line through them. Once you've drawn your graph, you then need to go and label everything. You need to clearly label the axes, the origin, the x-intercept, the y-intercept, the other point, if you needed to find one, and the graph itself. Okay, so let's go and have a look at an example where we're actually going to do this. In this example, you're being asked to draw a sketch graph of y equals 5x minus 10. Okay, so let's go and have a look at how we do this. Right, so first of all, you need to know when you're drawing a sketch graph, we're not going to be using axes that have all the markings showing all the numbers on the graph. We don't need to do that. We just need to have our 2 axes and we just need to show the points that we're actually going to be using to draw our graph, and we need to label those points and so on. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start off by finding my intercepts. The easiest intercept to find is the y-intercept. Okay, so in my equation, y equals 5x minus 10, the y-intercept is going to be the c value because this has been written in standard form. So my y-intercept is the c value, so it is going to be negative 10. Okay, then my x-intercept I get by making y 0 and solving for x. So I say 0 equals 5x minus 10, and then I'm going to go and solve for x. So I have negative 5x equals negative 10 divided by negative 5, so therefore x is equal to positive 2. So my y-intercept is negative 10, and my x-intercept is 2. So if I go and draw my graph now, I'm just going to draw 2 axes. Like that. And then I'm going to go and label those. This is the y-axis, the x-axis, and this is the origin. Now we're going to go and plot our points. So my y-intercept is negative 10, so that's going to be something like this. And my x-intercept is going to be 2, so that's going to be something like that. Okay, so now I can go and join that up. And this graph has the equation y equals 5x minus 10. So that is what our graph looks like over there. We've got our axes, which we've labeled, the origin, which we've labeled. We've plotted our x and y intercepts and labeled them. We drew our graph and labeled it. So that is what you should get for that graph. Now I'm going to give you a few that you're going to do for yourself. Here's the first one that you're going to do. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to draw this graph. Okay, so let's go through that and see what you should have got. Right, so first of all, we start off by finding our two intercepts. Our y-intercept is going to be our c value in the equation, which is 3. And our x-intercept we find by making y 0. So 0 equals x plus 3. So then if I'm going to solve for x, I'm actually just going to keep the x over here because it's already positive x. I'm just going to take the 3 across and it becomes negative 3 equals x. So my x-intercept is negative 3. Okay, so now I'm going to go and draw my graph. I've got my y-intercept and I've got my x-intercept. I can go and draw my graph. Okay, so over here, I've got my axes. This is the y-axis and the x-axis. That's the origin. Okay, so now I'm going to go and plot my intercepts. So my y-intercept is 3. And my x-intercept is negative 3. I'm going to go and join those up. Okay, and then we can go and label the graph with its equation, which is y equals x plus 3. So that's what you should have got for that question. Right, let's go on to the next one. To give you 2 minutes for this one as well. Okay, so let's go through that and see what you should have got. Right, so first of all, I start off by finding my intercept. My y-intercept is going to be 6. This has been written in standard form, so it's just my c value over there. Okay, then the x-intercept we're going to find by making y 0. So I have 0 equals negative 2x plus 6. Then if I solve for x, I'm going to take the negative 2x across, it becomes positive 2x equals 6. And then I divide by 2, so therefore x is equal to 3. Okay, so now I've got my intercepts. I can go and draw my axes. So my y-axis, my x-axis, and my origin. Then we're going to go and plot our points. So over here, my y-intercept is 6. And the x-intercept is 3. Okay, now you can see when I'm doing this, because it's a sketch graph, I'm just kind of estimating where these points would be. It doesn't have to be exactly the same scale on the two axes. Okay, so I'm just doing a rough version of it. But when I say that, it still is neat in that I'm still using a ruler, I'm still making it look neat. Okay, so I then go and label my graph, that is y equals -2x plus 6. So as you should have got for question B. Right, let's go on to question C. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to draw this one as well. Okay, so let's go through that question and see what you should have got. Right, so first of all, I'm going to take my C value, because this has been written in standard form. I can just take my C value, and that is my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is 5. Then, to find my x-intercept, I'm going to make y 0. So I have 0 equals half x plus 5. Then I'm going to take this over here. I've got negative half x equal to 5. Now, if I want to get x on its own, I'm going to divide by negative half, which is the same as multiplying by negative 2. So therefore, x is equal to 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. Remember over here, you could also think of this as it's an equation of fractions we need to multiply through by the LCD, which is 2. So I'm multiplying through by 2. That will cancel out that denominator over there, leaving us with just 1x. Okay, and we also need to get rid of the negative, so we either multiply or divide by a negative to get rid of that negative. So that's how I get the negative 10 over there. I times by 2 to cancel out the fraction, and then I'm going to get rid of that negative by dividing or timesing by a negative. Okay, now we're going to go and plot our graph. So our y-intercept is 5, and our x-intercept is negative 10. So now I'm going to go and join that up. And then label my graph. So that's y equals half x plus 5. So that's what you should have got for that one. Right, let's go on to question D. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to draw this one as well. Okay, so let's go through that and see what you should have got. Right, now this one's different because this has not been written in standard form. So when I find the y-intercept, I can't just use the c value because it doesn't work the same. Okay, so I need to find the y-intercept by making x 0 and solving for y. So I'm going to have 3 times 0 plus 2y equals 12. Now, when I make x 0, this term is going to be 0 and just cancel out. So I don't have to worry about that. So I actually just have 2y equals 12, which means that y is going to be 6. So my y-intercept is 6. Then our x-intercept, we're going to do the same way, but this time making y 0. So I'm going to have 3x plus 2 times 0 equals 12, which means that this term is going to cancel out because it becomes 0 when you multiply by 0. So I'm going to have 3x equals 12, which means that x is equal to 4. So my y-intercept is 6 and my x-intercept is 4. So over here I'm going to have 6 and I'm going to have 4 as my x-intercept. So I can go and join those up now. And label my graph. 3x plus 2y equals 12. So that's what you should have got for that one. So just be careful when it's not written in standard form. Our y-intercept isn't this value over here. It's not 12. Okay, you have to actually make x 0 and solve for y to get the y-intercept. And then you do the same thing, obviously, for the x-intercept. Okay, right, let's go on to our next example. In this example, we've got the equation y equals negative 2x. Okay, now this one's different because we don't have a c value in our equation. So let's go and have a look at how we would do this question. Okay, so over here, I've got my equation y equals negative 2x. Now, because there's no c value, it means that c is actually 0. So my y-intercept for this example is going to be 0. But now, because the graph is intersecting through 0 on the y-axis, it means it's also going to intersect through 0 on the x-axis as well. So if we try and find our x-intercept, we're going to have 0 equal to negative 2x. In order to get x on its own, I need to divide by the negative 2, and 0 divided by negative 2 stays 0. So therefore, x is equal to 0. So our x-intercept is going to be 0 as well. Now, I don't actually even have to show this step, because as soon as you see when you have a straight line graph that the y-intercept is 0 because there's no c value, it means it's going through the origin. So the origin is our y-intercept, which means that our x-intercept is also going to be the origin. It's the same point. So this is an example where we've got the origin case, where the graph is going through the origin. So my x-intercept and my y-intercept are the same point. So I don't have 2 points, which means I don't know what direction my graph has to go. So now what we have to do is find another point. So what we're going to do is we're going to take any x value and substitute it in and find the corresponding y value to make another point. Okay, so for my other point, I just find it easiest to use the x value 1. You don't have to. You can use another x value if you want to, but I just find it easiest to make x 1. So I'm going to have y equals negative 2 times 1, and that gives me negative 2. And then I can say that my other point is going to be x is 1 and y is negative 2. So it's the point 1, negative 2. So now I'm going to go and plot that on my graph. So my point 1, negative 2 is going to be somewhere down here. Okay, so now I can go and join that up. Like that. I'm going to label this point, which is 1, negative 2 with its coordinates. And then I'm going to label my graph. Y equals negative 2x. Okay, and just make sure that the origin is labeled there as well. So that's what you're going to do when you have an equation that doesn't have a c value. So it is y equals something x, and there's nothing, and there's no constant. That means that your y-intercept and your x-intercept are the same, they're both the origin. Then you have to find another point by substituting in an x value finding a corresponding y value to get an ordered pair, and then plotting that so that you have 2 points to draw your line. Okay, now I'm going to give you a couple like this you're going to do for yourself. Here's the first one that you're going to do. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to draw this graph. Okay, so let's go through that and see what you should have got. Right, so over here I've got my equation y equals x, and my axis is ready to go. So my y-intercept is going to be 0 because there's no c value. So I know that it's going through the origin. Okay. Then I need to find another point. Now I don't need to find the x-intercept because I know it's also going to be the origin. Okay, so I don't need to find that. I'm going to go and find my other point. Okay, so now for my other point, I'm going to make x 1. And if x is 1, it means that y is equal to 1, which is going to be 1. So my other point is going to be the point 1, 1. Okay, so now I'm going to go and plot that over here. So I've got my origin and I've got my point 1, 1. I'm going to go and join those up to draw my graph. And then I need to go and make sure everything is labeled. So my origin, I've got the point 1, 1, and I've got my equation y equals x for that graph. So that you should have got for that question. Right, let's go on to question B. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to draw this one as well. Okay, so let's go through that and see what you should have got. Right, so over here I've got my equation y equals negative a third x. Our y-intercept, again, is going to be 0 because there's no c value, which means that we're going through the origin. So our x-intercept is also going to be 0. I don't need to actually go and work it out. Now we're going to go and find our other point. Okay, so for my other point, I'm going to make x 1. Now, if x is 1, then this negative a third isn't going to change. So y is going to be negative a third. Because when I multiply by 1, the number that I'm multiplying by 1 doesn't change. So I've got negative a third times 1 stays negative a third. Okay, so I've got the point 1 and negative a third. Okay, so I'm going to go and plot that over here. So 1 negative a third is going to be something like this. So now I can go and join that up. Okay. So that's my origin 0 over there. This is 1 negative 1/3. And my equation y equals negative a third x. Okay, so that's what you should have got for question B. Right, let's go on to another example. Okay, now in this question over here, you're being asked to sketch the graph for the equation y equals 3. Okay, let's go and have a look at how we would do this question. Okay, so this is an example where I have an equation in the form y equals a number. So that means that I can't find a value of x because there's no x in my equation, which means I won't be able to find an x-intercept. I can find my y-intercept. It's going to be 3 because y is equal to 3 and y will always be equal to 3. So y will be equal to 3 on the y-axis where x is 0. So over here I'm going to put my point for my y-intercept, and that's going to be 3. But then I'm not going to be able to find an x-intercept because I can't solve for x. There's no way I can solve for x. If I make y 0, then that's impossible because 0 can't be equal to 3. So I cannot find an x-intercept. It's impossible. So what I'm going to do is find another point. So for my other point, you can take any x value with this y value. Okay, so over here, y is always equal to 3, no matter what x is. So you can choose any x value. Again, just like when we're doing these ones over here, I like to use the x value 1, but you don't have to. You can use any x value. Okay, so I'm going to make my other point the point 1, and then my y value I get from the equation, which is 3. Okay, so over here, I have the point 1, 3. So I'm going to go and plot that over here. And now I can go and join that up. And my line is going to be parallel to the x-axis. Whenever you have an equation like this, y equals a number, your line must always be parallel to the x-axis. If it's y equals a number, it's going to cut through the y-axis. Okay, and it's parallel to the x-axis. So here I've got my graph. This is the point over here, 1, 3. And my equation is y equals 3. So that's what we get for an equation like that, when you have to draw a graph for an equation like that. Right, now I'm going to give you a couple that you're going to do for yourself like that. Okay, here's the first one. I'm going to give you 1 minute to draw this graph. Okay, so let's go through that and see what you should have got. Right, so over here I've got my equation y equals -2. Once again, there's no mx, there's no x in my equation, which means that my y-intercept is going to be -2, and I'm not going to have an x-intercept. So I can go over here and plot my y-intercept -2, like that. And then for my other point, because I have to find another point, I can't use an x-intercept because there isn't one, but I still have to have another point. So for my other point, I can take any x value with this y value. So I'm going to just use the x value 1, and my y value I get from my equation, so it's -2. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, I've got the point 1, -2, and I can go and join that up. And now remember, whenever you've got an equation in the form y equals a number, it's going to be parallel to the x-axis. Okay, so this is -2 over here, and here I've got my point 1, -2, and then I'm going to label my line, my graph, y equals -2. Okay, so that's what you should have got for question A. Right, now we're going to go on to the last one for today, which is question B. I'm going to give you 1 minute to draw this graph as well. Okay, so let's go through that and see what you should have got. Right, so in this one, it's similar to what we had over here, except this time it's not y equals a number, it's x equals a number, which means that I can't make x 0 to find a y-intercept, because I can't say that x 0 is equal to 5, because 0 can't be equal to 5. So I'm not going to be able to find a y-intercept, but my x-intercept is going to be 5. Okay, so over here I'm going to have my x-intercept 5, and then I'm going to go and find my other point. Okay, now for my other point, just like over here when I was finding my other point, I made x1. I can take any x value as long as I use this y value. Here it's going to be the other way around. I can have any y value as long as I use this x value. So my x value is going to be 5. And then I can use any y value. Again, I'm just going to use 1, but you could use any y value. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say if x is 5, then y will be 1. So I have a point like that, and it should be parallel to my y-axis. Okay, so over here I've got my graph, like that, and I'm going to label everything. So this point, the intercept over here is going to be 5. This point is the point 5, 1. And my graph has the equation x equals 5. So that's what you should have got for that question. Okay, and that is how we draw straight line graphs or linear graphs using the intercept method. Now that we've learned the concepts in this lesson, it's important to practice, practice, practice. If you haven't already got the worksheet that goes with this video, you can find it by clicking on the link in the description below. The worksheet comes with an extra exercise full of questions for you to work on to master the concepts covered in this lesson. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button so that others can benefit from it too. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you can easily find my other lessons, and hit the bell so that you will get notified about lessons as I upload them.